Welcome to another episode of Courageous Me. And I know I get excited about these episodes, but this one particularly, because I had serious brain crush on this woman well before she even knew who I was. So I've known our guest Julie for a number of years now, and I'd come across her. I don't even know how I came across her, but I did. And I started following her and I listened to her podcast, followed her all over socials, read her book. And then a friend of mine said, there's this woman over in Toronto who's bringing this thing to Australia, is in my industry. Would you be free to meet with her? Her name's Julie Littlechild. And I've literally had to do a double take, get my breath and go, oh my goodness, I've got serious girl crush on that woman. So yes. I did meet her. We have done some work together and I'm still a fangirl and I've got her here on this podcast today. So Julie, before we actually get into the nitty gritty and we get to find out more about the incredible human you are, what excites you to have a conversation with me today about courage?
Well, I get kind of excited about any conversation with you because I see it like a free form of therapy and I can just, talk about anything. But I think, what strikes me is like this topic is so interesting to me because it got me thinking about it even before we came on today. And I just started to realize how different it is for everyone. And what some people think of as courageous, others that's just their everyday life. And so I just think like as humans and parents and partners that this is a great topic to think about.
Yeah, and there was one guest who goes through their values as a family together, and they've actually got them on the bottom of their placemats.
Oh,
And
cool.
each night when they sit down to family dinner, they've got to turn over one of the placemats and talk about it. And every time courage comes up, and she's got daughters, they all go, oh no, this one again.
Yeah.
Because all of them, it plays such a big role, even, when they're little girls in their lives. So,
Huge.
yeah, it's
It's
really interesting.
huge. Yeah.
Yeah.
It struck me as I was thinking about like how some of us even interpret the word a little differently. Like a lot of people could look at things I've done and say, well, that's very courageous. I think, oh no, that's just motivation. I need courage for other things than you do. Right. That's that personal element I think is so interesting. And for kids, 100%. Right. Couldn't agree more.
Absolutely. So you've just opened a nice little can of worms for me there, Julie. So do you want to just give us a quick update on who you are?
Mhm.
And then could you share a moment where you really had to reach in and find some courage or motivation, and why you almost say that the two could have been different when you review back over your life?
Yeah, for sure. So I live in Canada, as you said, and I am the mother of a teenager and the owner of a business. So those two things keep me rather busy. And I've been working in wealth management for, 25, 30 years, probably almost, if I look back now. And so I've lived as an entrepreneur, in terms of what defines my life, I'd say that is it. And, it's a busy life.
So where and I know we've done work together in this space, which is really cool.
Mhm.
But where in your life? So go back as far as you want, Julie. I don't care if it's
Yeah.
when you're a little girl or maybe
Mhm.
it's more recently, where there has been a moment where it was courage that showed up in your life,
Yeah.
even more so than motivation.
Yeah. And like I'm a hyper motivated person, and that's why I say that. But a few things came to mind, and I'm happy to sort of dig in on, and I don't know if it's the most recent, but it almost popped into my mind that there were times where courage took different forms or manifested differently. So one example was more like physical courage. And it was when I decided I was going to walk a marathon. Now, keep in mind, out of shape, hadn't done anything, and doing this kind of thing was a big deal, and sort of being open and vulnerable enough to fail. I thought about personal courage, which many would find strange, but for me, it's actually getting on stage. I do it a lot, but it's still something I have to push myself to do much more than other people. And then financial, I pivoted my entire business about a year ago and started to, in a different way, which created all of this risk. So I'm happy to go down any of those paths, but those are the examples that really kind of came to mind for me.
Oh, I love it. And I'd actually like to explore all three. So
Sure.
thank you for kind of planting those seeds. The first thing I want to ask is
Mm,
you made a decision to walk a marathon. Okay.
yeah.
So firstly, why walk?
Hmm.
Because I've never heard that before. Most people say they want to do a marathon and that means running,
Right.
albeit at whatever pace. So the
Yeah.
fact that you said walk, and why was that such a big deal? And why did you actually do it? What was it about wanting to do it that really drove you?
So the walk, so I wouldn't have been physically able to do a run. I'm not a runner, was in terrible shape. So the idea of doing something that was intense and took a lot of training, that's where for me the courage, because I thought, well, I'm going to look different than anybody else out there. But the idea came up that you could walk it. In fact, it's the Boston Marathon course, and every year they have this walk to raise money for cancer, for children with cancer in the area. So it seemed like, wow, that's a cool opportunity. But what for me required courage was kind of putting myself out there and saying, well, if I train hard enough, even though this was contrary to what I'd always done, and knowing that it might not work, like I could stop halfway. And I went with a team of women, and we got t-shirts that said if not now, and yeah, kind of, so it was all very fun. I did make it. I was probably one of the last, and I was a good hour or two after some of my teammates, I will tell you that. It was terrible. I could barely walk, but it was like those moments of just like, I felt like I needed to crawl over the finish line, where I thought I just needed to push myself. Like I really needed to do that.
Oh, I love though that even your teammates, you were an
Oh yeah.
hour behind
Oh,
them.
wait, I just lost them. They thought I had died somewhere on the course, I think, at that point.
Oh, how lovely friends. Just leave our mate go.
Yeah, yeah. No, there were a few of them at the finish line waiting.
But even that would be beautiful, right? That if you
Mhm.
have sort of decided to part ways mid-flight, and
Yes.
I'm sure it was done, you insisting that they carry on,
Oh,
that,
yeah.
that they were still there cheering you, like they were
Yes.
excited that you even finished. Julie,
Yeah.
what possessed you to do it?
I something in me, so one of the things that I've always struggled with is trying to get in shape and be healthy and prioritize myself and all of those things. So I was working with a coach, an executive coach at the time, and we talked a lot about big goals and how sometimes incremental goals don't get you to the bigger one. Like you get progress, but you do things differently when you set that big goal. And I knew that I wanted to get healthy, and that just seemed like so out of my wheelhouse and something that I could work toward. So I just knew I had to push myself to do something different, to shake things up, and to succeed in that way.
Wow. And can I ask how old you were again, just to get some context?
Yeah, I mean, oh gosh, now. I mean, I would have been in my 40s, I think, late 40s maybe.
Oh, wow. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. And
Yeah.
you weren't exercising at the time. So this
Not
really
a
was
lot. No, I just
shaking
it's
up.
yeah, that's the long-term struggle, and so it was just, yeah, it was different for me. It was very different, right? And that's why I say for
Yeah.
others that wouldn't have taken courage. For me that took courage, whereas I could, start a business and think that doesn't take courage, but others would, right? So
Yeah.
hence
And
two
that's where it
different.
definitely plays out
Yeah.
differently in people's lives, doesn't it? Can I
Mm.
ask, how did you feel when you went across that finish line, albeit, whatever, even if you were
Yeah.
last, you still kept going. and
Mhm.
got across. How did that make you feel at that moment?
Yeah, there's it was a very powerful and kind of profound moment, and I tied it back to just the impact of effort and grit and all of those things that I felt I had in other areas of my life. And so the beauty of that kind of endeavor is there's all this symbolism, right? There's signs, there's people cheering, there's a finish line, there's balloons. There's like, so we don't usually get that with our goals in life. Nobody puts up balloons whenever I accomplish something. So yeah, so it felt quite symbolic in a way for me. And it was a time when I was thinking about uh, well, I had sold a business. I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. It was all tied up in a lot of change as well. So I think that just, yeah, kept me going for a while.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And what has been the impact on, say, you looking after your body and your health
Mm.
and fitness since then?
It's a story of up and down, and that's the
Mm.
I don't think I've ever had anything that I've accomplished in my life where that was it, done. You just get on the roller coaster, and it's been high highs and low lows. Happens to be really good right now, so that's good. But yeah, right. So but it certainly had an impact in terms of knowing what's possible. And I guess sometimes we need to get that belief.
I think that's such a beautiful point because when you can see, hey, I could do that,
Mhm.
something that was so pie in the sky,
Yeah.
then what else could I do?
Mhm.
I love that. Hey, can you talk to me? You mentioned that, that was a really big thing for you. And actually, that would
Yeah.
be a really big thing for a lot of people.
Mhm.
But yet starting a business wasn't such a big thing. When did you start your own business? So to become an entrepreneur, so to speak, when was that moment? How old were you?
I was in my early 30s.
Mhm.
I had been working for small companies. I'd, worked for a bit, then I'd gone back to business school and came out, and yeah, that didn't feel risky to me. It was just who I was, I suppose. So at that point, there was just a point where I was working with a firm and I realized, well, there's no path forward at this firm just because it's small for me. So what am I going to do? And I don't know, I could just start my own business,
And
and I
what were
did.
you doing at the firm at the time? And what business did you start?
I was working with financial advisors and I had started doing some very early research on what made them successful, which was kind of an interesting line of inquiry at the time. Certainly nobody was doing it. And so, where it led me was to think that what I could do was coaching. Because I knew a lot about practice management and how advisors should run their businesses, and I thought, sure, and I knew people, so I could, I started with a contract. It didn't feel, my expenses were pretty low at that time in my life as well, so I could take those risks. Um, but I think my life, like so many, is just a process of emerging and changing and growing. I turned out that I would be like the world's worst coach. Nobody should ever pay me money to coach them. um but it took me a little while to figure that out, and it's not what I wanted, and so I found my pivot within that, but I changed the structure of what I did ultimately.
Okay, I find this fascinating, right? Knowing what I know of you.
Yeah.
So, firstly, I want to know what was it that you thought, you wanted to be a coach? What was it about that really appealed? And then
Yeah.
when you say you'd actually be the world's worst coach,
Oh, terrible.
why? What is it that you believe made you not a great coach
Well,
in your mind?
I think that at the time, what if I look back, what I had a lot of expertise, and I thought coaching was the way to work with people and deliver that expertise. I didn't have an appreciation for what coaching really was, and I have a lot of admiration for it. So I say that because I've been through it and I've experienced it. So people like you who, have a skill and a knack to help people understand what's getting in the way and to move forward and to get it. I was more like, this is just the answer. Why aren't you doing it? That's what didn't make me the greatest coach.
I want to hear it sitting on the planet. Why do you want to go the
here.
long way?
It's just fact. I really don't understand what the problem is. And so, yeah, so that's fine. Not everybody's meant to be every
No.
role. Yeah.
But I love that you thought that that's what you wanted.
Yeah.
You've gone out and given it a go. You've realized you're not good at it. But instead of then deeming yourself a failure, you've gone, okay, that's just not my thing. It's something else.
It's pivoting, constant. And I do think that I'm grateful that I tend not to see the need to pivot as failure in business, at least. It just evolves. It's so there's never a start and an end. You just figure things out, and that's exactly what happened. I guess if I didn't have that particular knack, I could have gotten down on myself, but it didn't feel that way at the time.
It's a beautiful knack then to have because, I know there's a lot of people and a lot of those that I've spoken to, worked with over the years, that when they get to that point where I don't want to keep going in this direction, but if I stop and change, it plays out as failure. And that at times can actually be greater than their desire to make that change. Was this something that you were always like this? Was this kind of, if I look back at Julie as the little girl, was this what you were like?
I don't know. I think people have often said I'm, I often go after what I want and I find a way to make certain things happen. I look at it and say, are you kidding me? There's failures all over the place. I don't even understand what you're saying. But I think I must have always had that kind of just do it, just keep going. And look, there's good and bad in that. But I guess I don't remember learning it. So
Yeah.
I suppose I must have.
Yeah. And when you say there's good and bad in it, because I find this fascinating because, again, it's not a quality that everyone has. But I know personally over the years where I've not done things in case I, might have failed. I wish I had more of that attitude that, failure's everywhere. Where do you think that might not have been something that you would call a virtue, that would more be not a good thing?
I think it has to do with what's driving you. And I think I've often veered into a mindset of not really doing things because it's what I wanted to do. I just literally keep my head down and I don't stop until it's done. So I think that, the inherent downside there is that, it probably would take me greater courage to step back and do something that was for me and not for the business or the family or somebody else, right? It's just like you just keep going. So, it creates a certain intensity but it's one that from the outside looks like it's all good, but it's, it creates pressure in its own way.
Thank you for sharing that. That's really beautiful. And it almost, I don't know if this is the right reference, but even the fact that when you're then in your 40s and you've realized you've not, say, prioritized your health because that's about you.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So that kind of, totally makes sense. I'm very fascinated about one of the other three things that when you first mentioned them. Public speaking. Now, I know you do a lot of public speaking.
I do.
You are very, very renowned in the wealth management industry globally. Talk to me about that, because you just seem like that's something that is second nature to you. But when I asked about courage, that was one of the things you spoke about.
Yeah.
Tell me why. How's that play out?
Because contrary to, I think, the persona of the speaker, I'm actually quite an insecure person. And so putting yourself on stage and being open to people saying lovely things about you, but also not so nice things about you, and realizing that not everybody does like you, right? That they're, as much as I'd like that, it's just you kind of put yourself out there in a very different way. So I think I'm more sensitive to how people feel, and again, back to the thing about health and how you look and how, it's just, there's a lot in doing that. So I'd say that's where I kind of have to push and get past it and not care so much.
But you still do it.
I know.
You
Well, because I get
still
paid
do
for
it.
it.
Yeah, but you don't just do it. You do it all the time and on big, big stages. Like you're a sought
Yeah.
after speaker. So why did you start doing it, firstly?
Mm.
And when did you realize that you felt this way? Because I mean, there's the natural process that most people go through when you start to speak where, at first it's hard, it's awkward, you feel
Yeah.
uncomfortable. And
Yeah.
then you either get past that and keep doing it,
Mhm.
or you don't do it. You just don't keep doing it because that's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I went through all of that as well. I remember
Mm.
my son asked me recently about something. I said, no, but when I remember being in university and having to present a case or something and, blushing and, just all of those things, it's like there was nothing that I was born and, hey, give me 1,000 people to talk to. It, it made sense for me in the business, I mean, that kind of thought leadership, and it was a way to get out there and promote what I did. And I liked, I did a lot of research, so we had something to say. It wasn't just like I'd be the last person who could get on and just say, here's my opinion about something. Like I actually need the evidence. I need to have that behind me. And so then it just kind of, yeah, it just grew from there. So I've been like incredibly lucky and grateful that people will hire me to speak. And people do say nice things about the work, but I think there was some point in my 40s or 50s where I'm sure there's a point where you start you believe your own press for a lot of years, and then you stop believing it, and then it's like, oh, now doubt can really start to creep in. And few circumstances where you don't do as well and you have to walk off and think, okay, I dust myself off from that. And I don't know, it just, I'm actually, I feel like it's coming back a little. I've tried to really rethink, like change my thinking about it completely. So it's not, this is being vulnerable and putting myself out. It's just great to have that opportunity. It's not nobody likes you. It's don't be ridiculous. There's a lot of people that actually do like you, and that person's probably just busy. So it's funny kind of reframing that goes on. So I'm not running scared, but it takes more than it might appear for me to do.
Mm. Yeah, well, the fact that you're still doing it and
Yeah.
I find this is such a fascinating area because a lot of the conversations I have about particularly women, although again, it's not limited to them, where there's something that they want to bring out or they want to do or they want to step into.
Hmm.
But to do that means they've got to show up in a more public way. So whether
Yes.
that's, doing a video, whether it's on social media or whether
Yeah.
it is public speaking, whether it's on a big stage or a small stage or in front of
Mhm.
a large or a small audience, and getting past that fear. And I loved what you said though about, you do the research, you've got the research, and that gives you something to say. You're not just being asked your opinion. You're
Yeah.
not being asked, just tell me about Julie Littlechild as the human. You're actually taking research that you've done, research that you back,
Mhm.
and you're able to then share it to get it across. But it's almost like that gives you the superpower to then be on the stage to share it, which means you've got to get past some of these other doubts and fears that you have around
Yeah.
the speaking.
Yeah, for sure. And I will say, and this will sound contrary to what I just said, but it was true, is as I hit and then went past 50, I noticed there was a lot of change. And part of it was, it's just like, whatever. Like, it's not that I didn't care, it's that I just was who I was. And that comfort, right, I think makes it a lot easier than being so wound up of being judged or not knowing, or the things that I think probably hold us back a lot. I found it much easier at a certain point.
And I completely agree with you as
Yeah.
someone that does a lot of public speaking as
Yeah.
well. And every time before I get up there, you have those, oh my God, am I going to live kind of moments.
Yeah.
But as you get older, you start to realize, yeah, not everyone's going to like me. Dominique Bertolucci, a coach, she has this beautiful saying, and it's some will, some won't, so what?
Yeah. Right.
And I swear, the minute I first heard that, I really latched on.
Yeah.
And it's almost like that frees me to go and do it and to know that not everyone's going to be a fan.
Yeah.
But gee, and particularly with you, Julie, like the ones that are fans really are fans. Like that's seriously
Yeah. Look,
amazing.
I don't take that for granted one little bit.
Yeah. No, I like what you said though about sometimes you do end up believing your own press until
Yeah.
you don't.
Yeah.
And then
Right.
there's those moments, of almost going back inwards. So
Yeah.
can I ask then, you said that you've pivoted recently, so in the
Hmm.
last 12 months.
Hmm.
Why did you do that?
Hmm.
And how did it feel doing that?
So we pivoted our business to just a very different model. We basically created some technology which changed a lot about the business. And part of that pivot was requiring a very significant investment, a reduction in income, a lot of things that went along with that. Um, I did it because I just believed that this product was needed. So just purely from a like being a servant to the industry to some extent, I believed that it would help people, help advisors, help clients. And then on a personal level, I'm 59. I'm thinking very much about what the next phase will look like. And it was also a shift in business model that said, there could be a path here. Like if I could create something with enduring value, that would be good in terms of the future. So there was a lot of things pushing me in that direction. And it felt a bit like jumping off a cliff, I suppose, doing it. And it's still, I'm literally still in the midst of it. It's going really well, but it's still hard. And so yeah, I could see the end. I guess that's what always kind of pulls me forward.
Yeah, because I was going to ask actually before you'd finished, why did you jump if it feels like jumping off a cliff? Now, I know some people love that feeling, but
Yeah.
not everyone does.
No.
Why did you still jump? But you've just said because you could see the end. You could
Yeah.
see what it was. And I think that's a gift, Julie, because there's a lot of people that need to jump, but if they can't see the end, like, literally if you're jumping off a cliff and you can't see what's down
Yeah.
there, the fear of what could be is
Absolutely.
too great that you don't jump. How do you do that then? How do you see the end, or how did you see the end, which allowed you to jump, albeit that end might evolve as
Yeah.
you go towards it? How did you do that?
I mean, I probably spent a lot of years trying to craft a vision for something. So it wasn't as if it was just overnight, but I knew very clearly that the path we were on wouldn't help me achieve my goals, and nor would it for our clients in a meaningful way, in the way that I wanted to. So I think it did evolve. It took a lot of time, a lot of thinking. The idea had to emerge for me. I didn't sit back and say, well, what else could I do? I mean, it came to be. And that was the vision. So that was kind of the outcome that I guess got me motivated and focused. And it just felt very real. Like it's even today, it just feels obvious to me where we're going and what's possible. Without that, it would be very, very hard to do. But there's also a hefty dose of plan A, B, and C in there. Like there is there is nothing in my life that is just, well, it's all this or nothing. It's more like, if that's not working, we've got to make some decisions. And so I'm a planner by nature.
Ah, you're a planner. When did you first realize you're a planner?
I don't know. I just, it's like I'm always thinking about the different outcomes. Like I just go straight to that. If I did this, this is where it would be. And I, so I know what can go wrong. Like we all do. And so it's just a matter of knowing what steps you'll take in any. So if I were starting something completely different today, I'd be thinking about, what's that going to be like? Is it clear? Do I have a vision? Well, what if after 3 months it's not working? Well, maybe I'd need to get a job and do something different at the same time. Or, I'd be kind of thinking of those transitional phases because that's how I can sleep at night.
Oh, and that's a beautiful quality too, because it allows you not to just look and jump. It allows you to go, okay, if I jump, then, here's this, here's that, I think that's absolutely beautiful. And it kind of helps, it helps me understand, why you're doing what you're doing, because you have got, that ability to kind of see all outcomes. Mm-hmm. So it does become a very well thought about vision that you're then able to chase after.
Yeah.
That's just remarkable. And so tell me, research. Mm-hmm. I know you do a lot of research, and I know that you've written a book off the back of doing all your research. What do you love about research?
I like, and I'm not a traditional researcher. It's not as if I would be hired as a deep researcher for anything, but I do love looking for patterns. I think I like seeing the stories in data. I probably, in most parts of my life, my husband and I joke about this all the time. He'll say, such and such happened. I wonder if, and I'll go, you have no evidence of that. You need like there is no pattern there yet. But even though the things that today, even we research more the softer side of things, it's not, it's how are people feeling and what do they need and all of that. So, but there is still pattern and there's still evidence and there's still things that we can learn about people. So I don't know if it creates structure for me. I don't think I just knew I just needed evidence of things. And so that's always been kind of a driver for me. It pushed me toward research, I guess.
Oh, I love it. Just that curiosity to find the evidence for something.
Yeah.
Is what, Oh, I love it. So why, when you did a whole lot of research a while back, and I remember when I first came across you and started, like I said, fangirling on you, and then you'd written a book.
Yeah.
Why did you write a book?
That's it. That was a big point in life. So I started my career thinking I would be a journalist, first of all. So if anybody asked me what my natural place was, it would be writing. That's my thing in university. And, it was not hard for me. We all have that thing that feels like that, right? So I always assumed that, I decided not to pursue journalism because I wanted to, eat, pay the mortgage and whatnot. I went in a different way, but that writing was always, so I always thought I'm going to write a book someday. And I could never, but again, I had to wait till it felt like the idea was there. There was nothing in me that was just going to sit down and start writing. I knew it was going to be nonfiction. And so I ended up writing during that time when I had sold the business and I was thinking about what the next stage would be, because I was just intensely curious about people that I met who seemed like really quite joyful. They were successful and they were joyful. And I'm like, I want me some of that. So so I started to research, and then it just literally kind of, well, now I'm seeing the story there, and the book kind of emerged from time. So the book had to be on the list, right? It was the bucket list of have to do this one day. I'm sure I'll do it again. but it felt quite right. But it was an interesting time because, again, just like this conversation, I treated it like therapy. It was like, well, I'm just going to write this book because I'm trying to figure things out and I just want to know. So I talked to my coach about things. I learned, I read, did the research, and it all came together.
Oh, I love it. And for those listening in, what is the name of the book?
It's The Pursuit of Absolute Engagement.
The Pursuit of Absolute Engagement. Oh, I love it. And what did you, in doing that research and writing the book, find out about these people that just seem to be living in this pure, blissful, joyful state? What came out of it for you there?
I I ended up create this is very me, but I created a framework because I was looking for a pattern, something consistent, and where I ended up doing looking at a few psychological concepts first. Like there was one called the crystallization of discontent, and there was all these theories, and I thought, oh yeah, this is like it's that moment when you realize something's I've got to do something differently. And but as I began to look at how, and this was part business book, in fairness, it wasn't really meant to be self-help in that sense, but the pattern that I saw is that the people who fell into this category that I was studying, started with kind of a deep awareness of what they wanted and needed. And it was that self reflection of this is something I'm trying. So we called that awareness. And then had the audacity, which was sort of the next stage, to set a goal around that. It's not just navel gazing, there's an actual goal that emerges. And then they did something with it, and then they took action. They found accountability through peers or family or some way to keep them. And then the final piece was renewal, which was really just kind of this acceptance that I'm a human being and I can't, I've got to take care of myself. I'm still working on that one, but I could see that was kind of the pattern that I was seeing is like we don't jump to the end of the story. It was like awareness and audacity and action, and we kind of evolved. So that ended up informing for me just how I tried to think about things. And so again, it was written for others, but I think it was a little bit written for me.
I hear that all the time, actually. And
Yeah.
yeah, and so from doing the research
Hmm.
and writing the book and getting it all out there,
Hmm.
what impact did that actually have on you, if any?
Um, it, I mean, again, it was one of those, yeah, I did it kind of moments, right? So yeah, check that off. Um, the lesson of doing it was really important, the process, and again, kind of the grit and what's required to do that. My son was very young at the time. In fact, I wrote the foreword to him because it was like it became this important lesson even as a mother. It was like just like look forward, think about what you love and all of that. But it also ultimately it gave me a place to come back to. So when things are off course, and they inevitably are, I often kind of go back to that framework and think about, okay, I can kind of level set again, and I can start to build. So it gave me that structure,
Oh,
I suppose.
how beautiful that in doing the research, writing the book gave you the structure. I
Yeah,
also love what you said there, Julie, too, about it almost was part of you being a role model for your son
it's huge.
about, what it takes to actually, go through the process of writing a book. And that was also part of the driver.
It's look that I have a teenage son. He's almost 15, and what we talk about the most, and what I think about the most, is grit and the challenges that they face, which are so different. And it's that lesson of just you're not going to wake up motivated, you're not going to wake up feeling like doing, but you put one foot in front of the other. I mean, this has become, I didn't realize how big a deal this was and how important that would be, but at the same time I have to be cautious with him that sometimes I'll get the, well, I'm not you. I said, no, you are not. But but don't think for a minute any of this was just what I woke up feeling like doing. Like sometimes that is the courage, right? When in face of some perceived risk, whether it's social or financial or physical or whatever, that's when the courage is needed, right? Not
Mm.
for everything else.
No, and again, the difference between courage and motivation.
Yeah.
Yeah, really playing out. And I also have a 15-year-old son,
Yes.
and totally understand. I
Right.
ran a live event a couple of weeks ago where I did the podcast live
Oh,
in front
right.
of an
Yeah.
audience. Yeah, now I've never done anything like that before. Anyway, I got him to come along and actually I made him work. So
Yes.
he had to earn his keep.
Yeah.
But I remember the beautiful moment was when we got home later that night and he said to me, I'm really proud of you. I
Aw.
didn't really understand what you do or what you did, but I kind of have more of a clue and I'm really proud. And that moment for me was where
Mm,
I thought, in all the things that you want to rub off on your children, it's I
yeah.
want you to give things a go. Because
Yeah.
I believe growing up, I was so crippled by if I couldn't do it perfectly, then I wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
And I
So
don't want
many
that
people.
for them.
So many. Yeah.
Spot
It's
on. So the fact that you, through all of this, through all you're doing, are
mm,
actually creating you're a beautiful role model
mm,
for a 15-year or nearly 15-year-old
mm,
son. But also others,
mm.
Julie, those that aren't your children that are
Mhm.
watching you,
Right.
watching what you're doing, from the other side of the world.
Yeah. Yay.
It's quite remarkable that the ripple effect of how you're showing up,
Mm.
and the impact it's having on others' lives is really beautiful.
That's that. I mean, it's so good to hear, and I think again, it's easy to say, well, you did this or you did that or you did the other thing, and I couldn't do that. Well, and that's not the story. That's not the question. It's just what do we each need, and then like with children, I think that process gets tempered with kindness to ourselves and to others at a certain point as well, to give ourselves a break, to you know understand our limitations and push through them. And I think these are, which will be kind of interesting for the next phase of life, when I have another blank slate in front of me and have to figure out what to do. I may need to draw on I may have to listen to this podcast
Yeah, because there's a lot of wise words of wisdom coming out of your
again.
mouth.
Gosh.
Um, that's actually a really interesting point, though. How would you feel if just say all you're doing now was taken away, right?
Yeah.
It no longer existed, the wealth industry collapsed,
Yeah.
and you had a blank slate. Not what would you do? How
Mhm.
would having a blank slate make you feel?
Yeah, I think that's a concern for me. I've been thinking about it a lot lately because of what we talked about earlier, when I'm just like, give me a goal. I'm on it. Like, let's keep going. Not having that might take more courage than any of this, because you now have to define yourself in other ways, and it's not professional. And, my son will have grown up, and, all of that good stuff. So it's a daunting thought. And I'm trying to think long and hard about what, um, whenever we get to that point, and if it was tomorrow, or if it was 10 years from now, what's life going to look like when somebody doesn't need me to do something? And that's kind of an interesting question.
It is an interesting question, and I wonder if there's a framework in there.
Maybe if I figure it out, I'll write a book.
You did say that there's probably
Part
another book
two.
in you. And I love that, though, that, just based on the fact that if this is what life was to present with you, how would you go
Yeah.
about it? And, wanting to have the plan, wanting to have a framework and a system. And if you don't have one, go and create it. Go and find it. Go and do
Yeah.
the research on it. And
Yeah.
I ask this question, though, because it is one that comes up a lot in the conversations I'm having,
Mm.
where particularly women get to this point where maybe they're made redundant,
Yeah.
or maybe they just don't want to work anymore. But it's like,
Mhm.
but then who am I without that?
Yeah.
If,
Yeah.
if this has defined me for so long, and I've been able to navigate whatever's thrown at me because of this, but if that was a clean slate, what does it look like? And I know it scares a lot of people. It
Yeah,
really does.
it does, and I think it's to some extent, I have a lot of respect for people who aren't on that treadmill every day and are thinking about whatever it is. I want to quit and be a yoga instructor. Well, at least you want to be a yoga instructor. Like having that draw to something is half the battle. That
Mm.
suggests some self-awareness, um and I think that's a good thing. You have to stop long enough to figure that out. And yeah.
Yeah, and that's the challenge. I'm seeing a lot of people go, I know what I'm doing is not what I want to do. It
Right.
doesn't light me up anymore, but I have no idea what
Yeah.
would.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that in itself is scary. What scares you? What else? What scares you right now,
um
if anything?
oh yeah, like daily probably. I mean, I think it's not. I'm not scared that, say, the business will fail completely. I'm a little scared that it won't go down the path that I want to. Like that's what keeps me focused. Is I don't want this to just be okay. I want it to be a big success. So, um, for years, I don't know why this just came to me. If somebody ever asked, if I brought my husband and said, "What am I scared of?" he would say mediocrity, because
Uh-huh.
it was. I think I grew up with this fear of just things being kind of okay. And ironically, my life is just kind of okay. It's not like I'm not flying around on private jets and what I as a young kid thought, really cool would look like. Um but it is this driving of having something bigger, and it's something more that. So yeah, not having that, having to just quiet down and figure out what's this next phase going to look like. I can't say I've embraced that fully yet. So I have some work to do, but it's because I need to figure out what I want, right? And that's the scary part.
Scary, but I guess does it also drive you at the same time? Does it motivate you?
It motivates me to an end. So if the end is, I don't know, you build a business, you sell a business, okay, now what? Right? It's all good and it's all positive, but I think I need to think long and hard about, what's important, at that point. And I do definitely have some work to do. And if nobody's calling you up saying, "Hey, come and speak or do this or do that," will that feel good or not? Well, I don't know. I guess I'll find out.
I love that. I love
I'll
that.
just
But I
call
love
you
that.
because you always make me feel better.
Oh, Julie, there's plenty of stages here in Australia. We're trying to
Yeah,
get you
that's
on.
right. We're good. We're good. We're good.
Yeah, or else just come and play with me. Come, come,
Yeah,
come,
exactly.
come. Totally. But I love that admission of the fear of mediocrity, because I know that there's lots of people that would be listening to this that would have that same fear.
Yeah.
And
And it sounds
admitting it's
wildly
not even.
judgy when I say it now. It's not what I meant. It's that you want something for yourself. It had actually nothing to do with anybody else's life,
Nope,
right?
nope.
And it takes many forms, greatness, right? So,
Oh, so many. Yeah.
yeah.
And in fairness of sharing, like my biggest fear is not living up to my potential, which is a
Right.
similar but just
Yes.
worded differently
Yes.
version.
Yeah.
Because that potential is only what's set by me.
Yeah.
And my potential and where I think that is compared to where someone else's is can be completely different. But I
100%.
don't want to settle
Yeah.
not trying to fill that gap and get there. So I feel like it's almost same but different,
Yeah,
different
for
language,
sure.
but similar kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah,
So on
absolutely.
that note, and you might have already answered this question, but
Mm.
what's the next thing you've really got to reach in and find some courage to do?
I think yeah, if I pick up on the strands of what we've been talking about right now, there's what does this plan look like for the future, and ensuring that the health and whatnot is front and center. As you hit that age of things not working the way they should and not feeling, that created the most fear for me, because I was like, hang on, if I'm not able to do what I want, when I'm that that really is a fear. So, I think just kind of facing up to that and just pushing forward and doing it. That's where the focus has to be. But again, that means focusing on myself, which is where the courage will come in.
Because you mean health, not health of the business. You mean health of you, the human.
Myself, yeah,
Yeah.
whether it's mental or physical or emotional, and being there for your family. So it's all of that stuff. But so now I have to prioritize myself, and we've already figured out that that's not the easiest thing for me to do.
Yeah, but hang on. I need to take my hat off to you. You walked a marathon.
Yeah, that was a while ago.
So,
Now it's more like physiotherapy trying to get me going again. It's a little different. There will be something big, I'm sure, again.
Oh, absolutely. I've no doubt. And the fact that, you don't settle for just good. Like, you want it to really be something. So I'm sure you'll figure it out. And next time we jump on the podcast, you'll have all these frameworks for people that,
I will.
that they can tap into
I
around.
figured it out.
Absolutely. If anyone's going to do it, Julie Littlechild is going to do it. Julie, if people want to just know a little bit more about you, a little bit more about the business and the incredible work that you do in the wealth management space, where can we send them?
Yeah, absoluteengagement.com. That's where everything lives, including the writing and research that we do.
Yep, beautiful. And I'll put the details in the show notes.
Oh,
But
good.
Julie, thank you. This has been an absolute delight for me to just have you for an hour and just talk more about who Julie Littlechild is as the human, because you're already phenomenal, Julie Littlechild, in work, in business, in the industry. But wow, what a gorgeous human you are too. So thank you so
Right
much for
back
sharing.
at you. Thank you so much.
Cheers. Oh, hang on.